Scrubs. This is Lisa.
Hey, and I'm Cristina. Nice to be here with you today.
Very awesome to be here with you. How are you, Cristina?
I'm doing awesome. How about you, Lisa?
I'm tired and awesome.
Good.
Yes. What are you baking today?
Well, I have actually not really been baking, but I've actually been making chocolate bonbons. So,
Ooh.
yes, right? Inspired by so many of the amazing bakers out there and chocolatiers out there that I have been dibbling and dabbling in a little bit of chocolate work. So, I had a little bit of leftover homemade caramel sauce that I thought I'd put to good use and filled some chocolate shells with them, and obviously always a crowd favorite around our place. So,
Yes.
And easy to share.
Did you use the spice box in your caramel?
You know, I did. That's my secret ingredient, spice box whiskey.
People are going to start to think that I'm some kind of a lush because we're talking about rum and I'm like, whiskey. Oh, you got to put that in the caramel. But I mean, the first time that I had your caramel and it had that such a good taste to it. That spice box whiskey really added something. So yeah,
it really does add just that extra little dimension of flavor. And it is such a unique whiskey as well, because it's actually infused with 3 different types of vanilla and cinnamon and a few other spices. So it's just beautiful. I really, really enjoy using it for my caramel, but I also put it in a lot of my other baking as well.
That makes so much sense why it would taste so good then if it has all those different spices in it.
Totally. How about you? Enough about me. How about you, Lisa? What have you been baking? I know it's wedding season and you are just going nuts, baking away, and your creations continue to blow me away. So what are you working on this week?
This week, we have a wedding that we're actually attending on Saturday, and my friend Glenn is getting married. Congratulations, Glenn. And they have requested a 3-tier chocolate cake with chocolate ganache between the layers. He gave me a lot of freedom with it. He said, basically, we want 3 different textures on the different tiers and flowers of some kind in whatever color, because they don't have a color scheme. So right now I've just been working on getting the layers filled with the ganache. It is very, very chocolatey. It is too much chocolate for me, but the vanilla buttercream hopefully will kind of cut that richness of the chocolate a little bit. Friday will be the decorating time. So
nice. Yeah. And that's where you really, that part of the process is I think what really, what you love to do. And I just love to see your artistic skill and background and talent just come to life on all your cakes that you do. It's stunning to see your works of art.
Oh, thank you. You know, I'm never satisfied with them. They never look the way that I want them to be. And then I never know how to take a compliment when somebody says that it looks good, because it doesn't look the way I want it to look, you know. But I appreciate
it still looks spectacular, and no one would know any different, that it wasn't exactly what you had in mind. But whatever you do end up creating, Lisa, it's just absolutely beautiful work.
Thank you. Thank you
and
so much.
And your friends are very, very lucky to have you in their lives. And I hope the wedding goes off super well, and lots of good wishes to the happy couple.
Thank you. I will pass that on for sure. Should we talk about the text message with the ass thing?
Oh my God, that was so hilarious. What was it? Silky big ass or something?
So I was thinking, you know, with all that richness, I really would have liked to kind of cut it a little bit with maybe some fruit or something a little bit different, or maybe put some alcohol in that ganache, you know, because apparently that's what I like to do. And so I sent...
Nothing wrong with a little rum or a lot.
Nothing wrong. I sent my friend a message yesterday, just double checking, you know, you want only chocolate ganache with those between those layers, nothing to kind of cut that richness. And he said, just ganache, please, and no alcohol added. And so I was driving when I got this message, and then I asked Siri to please say, you know, whipped ganache or silky thick ganache. But what she sent was with good ass or silky thick ass.
I think I'll go for the silky thick ass, actually. That sounds amazing.
That's what he went for. Oh, man.
I love it. You gotta love Siri.
Thank goodness it was a friend, though, because I think if that was a professional sort of situation, can you imagine? Would you like good
I'm
ass
sure.
in your cake or a silky thick ass in your cake? Be bad.
Oh my goodness. So funny though. I mean, you gotta love Siri.
Yep,
I'm just gonna say Siri has injected a lot of fun into text conversations over the years.
most
So
definitely for me as well.
too
Yeah, it
funny.
has been very funny. Anyway, we got that straightened out, and now I know what he wants in his cake, and it is not ass.
That's a good thing. I'm not thinking that might be very
No,
appetizing.
probably not appetizing. I don't know if it's appetizing enough for even for this conversation. So who knows if it's going to end up in the final cut.
Cool.
Would you like to do a little bit of an introduction to our guest who we're going to be speaking with today?
Absolutely. You have likely seen Gavin, or as he's known on Instagram, Crumbs in My Beard, YYZ. You've probably seen him on as many special appearances like The Social, The Marilyn Dennis Show, The Morning Show, amongst so many others. But he's also competed on season 3 of Great Chocolate Showdown. That's how I first noticed Gavin and started following him after that. And now he can actually be seen on a new concept cooking show that's on Gusto TV app called Blitz. So we're thrilled to have Gavin join us today and to chat about all of this and so much more.
That was also part of how you ended up starting doing the bonbons and the chocolates and getting more interested in that.
Absolutely. When I started watching Great Chocolate Showdown, and just to give it a bit of background, I am not, as you know, a huge chocolate fan to begin with. I do appreciate some white chocolate, which I know that's another topic for another day and very controversial at best. But
It's not
I've
chocolate.
never been a massive chocolate fan. So but I certainly can appreciate the artistry and the creativity that people do with chocolate. And so the Great Chocolate Showdown, when it was on, I think it was on for about 4 seasons, started watching it during season 1 and I fell in love with the show because it's just such again, another cool baking / chocolate work competition. And yeah, just fascinated by everything that they did. So I started again my journey down that path, and it's a fun one. Frustrating too, it can be, but it's so fun working with chocolate and just learning all about it, and learning the different tempering methods, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm.
It's just a really nice little skill to continue working on and playing with in the kitchen.
And tempering chocolate has long been my nemesis. We talked with Steve Levitt last week, and he was actually the person who really helped me kind of learn how to temper chocolate properly. I still feel like half the time I don't actually manage to temper it properly, but he's given me some tips and tricks. So I always have felt like that is a skill that would serve me well. And I felt like I really need to figure that out before I ever try any kind of competition level baking. But even just for like these bakes that I'm doing at home, it would be good to be able to make some of these lovely decorations. And so, yeah, it's exciting to watch people on the Great Chocolate Showdown who know exactly what they're doing and can make magical creations with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, Gavin. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Good, thanks. It's the end of another day here. It's all a bit weird dealing with people in other time zones.
Yes, sorry, I'm
Don't
missing my
worry.
supper.
So, Gavin, we are so thrilled to have you join us today to chat about all of the amazing things that you've been doing and your journey within the culinary arts world. So, we are so thrilled to have you here. We thank you for your time and your energy to be with us today. So, officially, welcome to Baking Scraps, the Sweet Talk podcast. Welcome, Gavan Knox.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. It's a treat.
Thank you for being here. We always start every episode of Baking Scraps with asking each other what we've been baking lately. So we had a little bit of chat about what we are individually working on, but we're going to ask you, Gavin, what have you been baking in your kitchen these days?
Right. So recently, I've actually been, I guess, jumping on the whole Bridgerton bandwagon. Everybody seems to be doing that. So there were lots of kind of, I guess, small little bite-sized treats. The latest one that I did was actually a bunch of buttermilk scones. However, they had a slight twist of it was my first time actually trying to make clotted cream to go with them. And normally it's basically quite not a laborious task, but time consuming because you have to bake it in the
Long
oven for
process.
12 hours.
Hmm.
But I learned the hard way that actually you generally can't use the cream that's widely available in the supermarkets because it's ultra pasteurized.
Mm.
Oh,
And
right.
that won't actually yield the right results. However, there is a stovetop method where you can use it. It doesn't take as long, and it gives you a result that's pretty on
Mm.
par with it. I have to say, you're looking
Oh,
at
I
in
want this
comparison
recipe.
to the 12 hours. I think it's maybe about 30, 40
Wow.
minutes. You're literally just standing there and kind of stirring it. But in comparison to waiting and having your oven running overnight, it's quite the
That
shortcut.
sounds great. I think Lisa and
No
I are
kidding.
both super excited if you would be willing to share said quick clotted recipe
Yeah,
with
sure.
us.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll post it up and or I'll just mail it to you
Plotted
directly,
recipe.
whichever way. I know that's the thing
Oh,
about it. A
thank
lot of
you.
people are turned off
Mm.
by the name when you say it too, clotted cream, and it's be like, oh, what
I know.
is that?
Oh,
But
but it's so
So yeah, but I
yes,
delicious.
hear you.
exactly, exactly. And do not bother looking for calories. Don't look into the calorie
Not at
Yeah,
count
all.
no,
on it.
And I agree with you actually.
I gave up
The
on that.
first time I saw clotted cream on a menu or something, I was like definitely turned off because it just did not sound appetizing at
Yeah.
all. But when I went to London and I actually had a chance to try it,
Mhm.
I was like, where has this been all my life?
It's
So good.
a
Hmm.
revelation once you actually try it and get on it. There's no
No,
looking
no,
back.
fantastic.
Yes, for my book club last month or the month before, my book club was reading some Jane Austen, uh, not a Jane Austen book, but a book about people who like Jane Austen
Right.
books. It
Yeah.
was a very boring book, but I decided that I was going to host a full high tea,
Right.
and so I did that, and I really wanted to make clotted cream for it, and then I looked into making it and said, nope, I'm doing enough for
Not
this
happening.
tea.
I'll do everything else
But now
but the
I'm like,
scones and clotted cream.
exactly. Well, I did the scones and I bought the
Yeah.
clotted cream, so I'm gonna have to host another high tea after I
Just
get
there
this
you go.
recipe
That's a
from you.
perfect excuse. You can try it out at home
Sounds
yourself now.
awesome.
Definitely a
Great.
Bridgerton high tea.
So let's start at the beginning. Can you please share with us a bit about your story? We'd love to hear about your journey from your early baking cooking days to where that's led you today. And when did you start baking? Who's been your biggest inspiration for those incredible, tasty little treats that you make?
Okay then. So are we sitting comfortably? Because it can be a long one.
The floor is yours.
Basically, I started, I guess, to be honest, when I was a kid. My mom was always in the kitchen. I come from a big Irish family, and the kitchen was always like the main hub of activity and where things were going on. So I basically grew up in the kitchen and next to my mom and watching her do things. And they weren't necessarily always by the book. She was the type of baker and the type of cook, I guess, that once she would have a recipe down to pat or she knew what she was doing, that would be it. She would kind of put her own spin on it from there and generally just go rogue. So I grew up with very much that kind of influence. I was always starting to kind of like experiment in kitchen and experimenting sound makes it sound a lot fancier than it was. It was just basically using packet mixes of like cheesecakes or scone mixes or cake mixes, but tweaking them in a way and putting in something in it that wasn't supposed to be there. Now, sometimes they didn't go to plan and it would be abysmal. So those would go in the bin and they would not be spoken about. And I still don't talk about them today. But it gave me that kind of a sense of abandon and a sense of, I guess, thinking outside the box, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And of course, once I got to university and into my 20s, that all kind of got put on the back burner. Partying too much and having the social life. And then I guess I really kind of came back into it when I met my husband, and I kind of took the role as being the foodie one who would do the cooking and baking. And then it really came into play then when we adopted our kids. And it was via them being at school and having school bake sales and fundraisers that I started getting back into baking and gradually kind of remembering all the stuff that I used to do, all those little tips, tricks, shortcuts, and kind of, I guess, at the risk of sounding really, really cliched, reigniting that passion for actually cooking and baking and doing things in there. And then it started happening that friends and family were saying, this is really good. Why don't you try selling it? Or would you be interested in doing something for my office party at Christmas or at Halloween? And I thought, okay, I'll give this a go. So then I kind of went into the business world of running my own home based baking business. That's quite a mouthful.
Ooh, wow.
And did that for a couple of years, and that was okay, and quite successful. It gave me, basically, it wasn't a major earner, but it gave me some kind of feedback and also some kind of income anyway. And then in 2014, I believe, there's a big newspaper and food publication. The Guardian is a newspaper, and Observer Food is the food publication. And they would run an annual food awards, quite big. You would have the likes of Nigella, Heston Blumenthal, Jay Rayner, all the kind of big British foodie names. And one of their categories was a best reader's recipe, which they would open up to the public. The readers could send in their recipes, and they would be judged by a panel of people like Heston Blumenthal, which is, that was a bit, oh, do I really want to do this? So I just bit the bullet and sent in a recipe for, and this is where you might raise your eyebrows, what I called smoking pig liquor brownies. And basically, they were a spiced chocolate brownie with crispy bacon pieces cooked into it. And then they were topped with a chocolate coated sliver of crispy bacon. The name comes
Ugh.
from, apparently it's a fairground treat in the southern states, and you buy basically strips of crispy bacon, and they're dipped in chocolate and either coated in pistachios or some kind of nuts, and it's basically like walking around chewing
Mm.
on this piece of chocolate covered bacon. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try using that in some way. And the funny thing was, I remember saying it to my husband that I was going to send it in, and I was calling them that. And he was like, oh my God, you cannot do that. Nobody is going to want to eat something called a smoking pig liquor brownie. It sounds disgusting. But I thought, well, what do you know? You never cook anyway. So I decided to go rogue there myself. Sent it in. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, got the phone call saying, yes, by the way, you've been judged as a winner, XYZ. And that was the kind of boosting confidence for me to go, actually, you know what? It's not just something that I like doing. This is something that,
Mhm.
you know, professional peers, people I look up to, they actually judged and thought it was good. And it was there that I started getting more into, blogging about it, experimenting with recipes. And then I told you this was a
It's
long
all
one.
good.
Then fate kicked in, and we took a vacation here to Toronto just because I always wanted to come here, and it's one of the things niggling at the back of my mind. While we were here, my husband did some business networking, and as a result of that vacation, he basically got headhunted for a job.
Oh,
So we went
wow.
back to the
That's impressive.
UK, and the thing was, we had only just finished renovating our house. We had just bought a car. We'd only, moved into the house in less than a year, and we were like, "Oh, what do we do? Do we take this leap of faith, or do we just,
Mhm.
what's going on?" Now, I'm a firm believer in the universe speaks and things happen for a reason. So we decided we would do the move here to Toronto, give it 2 years, see what happens. And if it goes belly up, we can always go back to the UK. And if not, stay here. Great. And lo and behold, that was in 2016, and we're still here today on it. In the meantime, of course, there's been all the journey here on Canada side of the waters, which has gone
Yeah.
from Great Chocolate Showdown to, currently being featured on Blitz on Gusto TV, which is quite something.
Fantastic. And we've both had an opportunity to
Yes.
watch Blitz, and it is what a refreshing show, actually, because as you probably know, a lot of the baking cooking shows have really turned into these competitions now. So it's
Yeah,
to
everything is a
actually
competition.
find a show where there's a bit more focus on the actual art of what you're preparing, and also getting to know the cook itself,
Mhm.
themselves.
Yeah.
It's a breath of fresh air, and your authentic self shines so
Mhm.
brightly on that show, as well as
Thank
it
you.
does when we see you on all the other TV shows that you are on, and all your special on air expert baking segments that you do. It's really cool. So, what draws you to being on TV? And obviously, we love to watch you on there, and right back at. I think you present yourself so beautifully on TV. So the camera certainly loves you as much as we love you watching you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's like you're making me blush. It's just as well as bad lighting that I've got here. To be honest, it was a long thing with me. I've always had that itch to scratch. I think I spoke about this on Gusto actually, where I wanted to
You
compete
did.
on a reality TV show. So much so that when we were living in the UK, I auditioned a few times for Great British Bake Off. Didn't make it there, but as I say, the universe speaks. Moved over here to Canada and auditioned for Canadian baking show. I didn't make it on there. And then I got an email or a DM seeing and asking if I'd auditioned for Great Chocolate Showdown. Now that wasn't quite on my radar because, again, Christine, like you're saying, a lot of the TV shows that are covered now are all competition. So it's one competition about Halloween or chocolate or Christmas or something, and
Mhm.
there's a little bit of too much of it. So Great Chocolate Showdown wasn't necessarily on my radar, but when I looked into it a bit more, I was like, okay, maybe this, just because I haven't heard of it doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. The thing, however,
Mhm.
that was hesitant and making me hesitant in my mind was chocolate in the name. I had never worked with chocolate, or actually, I had briefly, and it is not a friend of mine. I hate tempering chocolate. I love eating it. If you could see the rest of my body, this is a figure that loves chocolate. You will know that. But yeah, that was putting me off. Going exactly how much involvement will chocolate have, and working with chocolate.
Yes.
And I spoke to the producers, and they were like, "Well, there is a certain emphasis on it, but it's not the be all and end all of it." So I thought, okay, I'll audition, went through the process and didn't make it. And I kind of thought, oh, is the universe trying to tell me something now? Yeah, I've tried in the UK, tried here in Canada, and it's been a no. So maybe I should just take a step back. And it was one of those things again when I guess I wasn't looking for it. I got the rejection email saying, "Oh, we'll keep you in mind. You were great. There was just something. We were looking for something else." All the very polite
Mhm. Yeah, all the counseling stuff.
Passover email. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
okay, maybe whatever. And then season 3 rolled around. And again, there was an email and contact going, look, we'd love for you to audition. Are you going to do it? We still remember you from last year. And I thought, okay, whatever. I've been here before. Let's try it. And, if they say no, whatever. But lo and behold, it wasn't a no this time. So maybe it was an amalgamation of both the auditions or the one, I don't know. But yeah, I made it onto season 3. And this might sound a little bit weird. I approached it with, I guess, the philosophy not so much of wanting to win it. Don't get me wrong. I would have loved to have won it. 50 grand is not something I'm going to turn my nose up at. But I actually thought if I could use my time on it as exposure and get myself known out there, or at least have that to bulk up my resume unofficially.
Yes.
And lo and
Yes.
behold, I went on, did what I did, and did my thing, which apparently I'm told, kind of stood out because I do not look like your regular baker guy, really. And that coupled with my philosophy of experimenting and using weird and different ingredients, caught the
Mhm.
judge's attention and thankfully made it then to the semifinals. And again, it was that kind of confidence boost of actually going, here
Yes.
I'm again. I'm the last kind of man standing the last Canadian man standing almost because
Mhm.
the other semifinalists
Mhm.
were all from the US. And as a result of that kind of media exposure, then I kind of went, you know what? I like actually being in front of the camera. Surprisingly for me, because in real life I am actually uber shy. I hate it. It's do not ask me to stand up in front of people at a party or anything like that. And yeah, so I used that exposure on Great Chocolate Showdown, and literally started cold emailing, cold DMing producers on Toronto TV networks and saying, look, I've done this. I have no experience. Would you
Mhm.
give me a slot? Or what do I have to do to get a slot? And there was lots of no's. Again, I think that's kind of a given with going into the TV industry. And
Mhm.
then a couple of them turned around and said, yeah, we'll have you on. You've got like, tell us what your thing is. We have seen you and we've seen your resume. We like it. And you have 5 minutes, literally. And so it's been a learning process of how to compact recipes into 5 minutes. And sometimes it's not just one recipe, it could be
Mhm.
two or three. So there's lots of, and here's
Wow.
this, and then by the magic of TV, here's one that I made earlier. And
Yes, perfect.
again, as a result of that, then that's how I ended up on Gusto, doing Blitz.
Yes.
That was actually a very different experience because it was cooking per se as
Mhm.
opposed to baking. And
Mhm.
apparently, the reason for that is they don't have ovens in the studio where it was being
Ah.
filmed. So it was all stovetop.
Huh.
And also because it was back to working on the clock, because it was like a 45-minute segment to film in. And of course, it's done all
Mhm.
live to tape. So, Christine, like you were saying, it was
Yeah.
watching you as you prepped stuff along. And I think I didn't sleep properly for about 2 days before, kind of running
Oh, I
through in my
bet.
head, scheduling and staging of, okay, I'll do this in this time. And whilst that is cooking, I'll move on to
Mhm.
doing this bit. And whilst I'm prepping that other piece can be finishing off. So when I was actually filming it, I was quite nervous actually to have it go out
Oh.
because I always have a fear of being too in the zone. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Kind of being
Mhm.
too
Mhm.
focused and too concentrated and coming across as boring or not engaging enough. And this was going on in my head whilst I was, running through the mental staging of, okay, I have that done and I've got 5 minutes to do this and then I need to move on to this. So there was lots of juggling on Blitz. It was, yeah, it was quite
While
Mhm.
being
an
interviewed by
interview.
somebody,
Yeah.
while that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
ding was going,
Yeah.
and oh, time for a
And that was
commercial.
the other weird thing to get used to. It's like automatically to describe what I'm doing, but to be actually doing it, but then talking about my childhood or favorite restaurant in Canada or in Toronto or wherever. That was a little bit of almost like having a shadow going off and going, I have to do this in the background, then
Yeah.
talk here and do this.
Yeah.
So it was, again, for me, it was all about the experience of it and using that and going, okay, I've done that now. And
Sounds
what's
good.
next?
Well
And you had
done.
an
Well
episode that
done.
aired the end of May, and then I think you have one
Yeah.
coming up. What can we expect on that one?
Yeah, the episode that just aired, that was actually the premiere of season 3, and that
Mhm.
went out last week, or was it this week? For me, last week. So the next
Last week.
episode, I believe, is going out on July 1st, and it will be repeated on July 3rd. Now, the good thing about the Gusto, if you actually look on the app, you can watch it live on the app, or then episodes are
Mhm.
available on demand. So once it's up there, you don't have to, if you miss it, you can just go search for the episode or go search for my name, Gavan Knox, and you'll see the episodes I've been featured on. This one is a little bit different because, of course, it's almost like two separate menus you have to make. So I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, okay, this is it. So this one I made pork paprikash with spatzel, and then I did almost like it was a strawberry cheesecake parfait, so almost like a deconstructed
Yum.
cheesecake.
Oh,
So
So
sounds
good.
so
Yep.
good.
seems to go okay. It was, as I always say, nobody died and the kitchen didn't blow up,
It's a
so it's
win.
all
It's
good.
a win when that happens.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know. I mean, you may have the fear of the kitchen blowing up, but you shouldn't. But you obviously are fearless in the kitchen with your ingredients
Mhm.
because of that whole inherited idea of no ingredient is off
Mhm.
limits. And so, what I really want to know about is this black garlic ice cream.
Right.
Tell us how that came about, because it seems weird, but it also sounds really, really, really interesting, and I want
It's
to try it.
it is so good. Part of the reason I like it is because again, it's not there. There is a slight flavor of garlic in there, but I think what surprises people, it's not as in your face as if you would have it in a pasta dish. So if you would have regular pasta, how it actually came about was, truth be known, I don't remember. um,
Great.
I
Interview
do know
over.
I was in the UK and I read about black garlic somewhere, and I use it in cakes a few times. So I would use it a lot with chocolate. It goes really well in a chocolate cake. And I remember for a few Halloweens did Halloween cookies. So they were like in the shape of witches' hats or bats, but they were like black garlic and ginger snaps with black garlic. And then I remember, I think during the process of the show, kind of going, right, what could I do again? That's, something that the judges aren't expecting, something that other people aren't expecting. And of course, we had the episode on ice cream. And previously in the back of my head, I'm going, well, I've always paired it with chocolate, with a dark chocolate. It goes really well together. And then one of my favorite ice creams is mint choc
Mine
chip.
too.
I know there is a divisive camp of mint and chocolate ice cream not
I love
liking. I
it.
love
I'm
it.
camp. I'm in your camp.
We
Do
all
not
love
at
it.
me. Do not know anything. So
Yeah,
then
nobody else can say anything.
and I think because of that, and this is very typical of how my head works, it was making those kind of stepping stones of going, well, there's mint choc chip ice cream. I know chocolate goes with black garlic. So if I take the mint out and put the black garlic in, that means then that the black garlic and the chocolate will actually work together. Or in my head, it
Mhm.
would. Tried it, and yeah, it was, to me, as I said, I hugely love it. I've made it quite often since the show, with a difference in that I don't have an ice cream maker at home. I have enough gadgets on my counter, under the counter, hidden in drawers, cupboards, you name it. If my husband sees one more gadget, he is probably going to divorce me. So I don't have an ice cream maker. So I looked at doing it as a no churn method. So using condensed
Mhm.
milk, and that worked out really, really well. So a couple of years ago, actually, was it a couple of years ago, or was it pre-COVID, pre-lockdown? This is the impact
Mhm.
of it. I can't
Mhm.
remember when, but I actually spoke about it at Toronto Garlic Festival. So every year in Toronto, there's a garlic festival. Lots of vendors come, all independent farmers and suppliers. And I spoke on black garlic ice cream, gave out some samples of it, and yeah, people seem to love it as well. So for me, it's like tick, it's done. Nobody can tell me any
Oh,
wrong.
it sounds fascinating. And like Lisa, I would love to try that one day as well, because it just sounds, it's so unique. Is there another ice cream or another flavor out there that you would compare it with, or like that it's most like?
The well, the flavor of a black garlic itself to me is almost like if you could imagine a gummy bear or a gummy, but with a slight
Oh,
molassesy taste to it, with a
Oh.
hint of
mm,
umami and a subtle hint of garlic. It's not overpowering, and I think as well, if what I've noticed is when I tell people beforehand that it's black garlic and how it's made, they pick up on
Mhm.
it. And then if I
Yes.
don't, they don't know. They know it's something there, but they don't automatically place it as garlic. They know
Mhm.
it's an unusual flavor, and it's all part of the
Right.
process that it goes through this Maillard reaction of slow, almost
mm,
fermenting it, and yeah, it
Mhm.
takes the punchiness of the traditional and the usual garlic that everybody's used to out,
Mhm.
and leaves you
Mhm.
with this. Yeah, it's almost like texture wise, it is very much like a gummy, so it's quite squidgy and easy to smear into
okay.
a paste almost between your fingers, and
So like
flavor.
a roasted garlic, but you ferment it
Yeah,
instead of
it's
roast it.
kept at a
Okay.
lower temperature, so it slowly undergoes that reaction and changes the enzymes. And because of that change in the enzymes, it
Mm,
affects the flavor then. So it's less of the kind of, I think, is it allium, the onion
mm, mm.
branch or that kind of branch of flavor, and
Yeah.
more into that slightly sweeter with the hint of
Hmm.
umami there in it.
Cool.
Oh, I want to try it. Okay, we're going to do a cross
Yeah,
country baking scraps
exactly.
tour.
We're gonna.
And definitely when we end up in your neck of the woods, we're going to
Okay,
be like,
Gavin.
okay,
I'll book
Gavin,
you in for a
where
long
is
Gavin,
time.
we need some of this black garlic
Thank
ice
you.
cream.
It sounds amazing.
It really does.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's
And it's so easy. The no churn recipe is so easy as well. It's, for somebody, I initially, before I started experimenting with ice cream flavors, was always afraid of ice cream because I thought, I don't have an ice cream maker. It's going to end up
Hmm.
terrible. It's almost going to go wrong. And now I'm a complete convert to no churn ice cream. I'm not interested in ice cream maker at all.
mm. I've never actually made a no churn ice cream. I've always made it. I have an attachment.
An
So
attachment one.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
really
so do I
easy.
for the
The
kitchen
key
leaves.
to it is just have everything cold. So your
Mhm.
bowl, the whisks, the cream, everything needs to be just like, straight out of the fridge.
Very cool.
Right.
Awesome. That
Awesome.
is really cool.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean and that's what the amazing thing is actually is just all the flavor combinations that you do put together, and I love that. I think that is the spice of life when you can mix
Mm.
things up a little bit. So
Actually, my first appearance on the social was actually for a savory ice cream
yeah, I
segment.
saw that one.
And it was where all the judges were blindfolded
Yeah,
and they had to guess the ingredients. That was a really fun,
yeah.
a fun way to introduce the social to me and what I do.
Oh, and I love that interaction you have with them as
Perfect.
well. They're just, I think they are so giddy when you come on the show. They're so excited because you always have something that
It's a sugar rush.
that's probably it. But I think you also, it's the unexpected, right? You
Yeah.
you bring in that unexpected that just is that beautiful little surprise. So
Well, I'm hoping, it's been nearly 2 years that I've been kind of on it regularly. So I'm kind of taking that as, okay, I must be doing something right.
I think they like you.
I
Yeah.
Yeah.
think so
Sounds
too.
like it.
I
Just a
think,
little bit.
yeah,
Just a
yeah. I
little.
think you're a pretty easy, likable kind of guy, Gavin. So I think, your presence
Oh, I don't
really,
know. I don't think my teenagers would agree with that.
oh, they,
Oh, but teenagers don't
teenagers,
agree with
they don't
anything that
count.
Yes,
their
They
parents
don't
exactly.
say.
count. It does get better as they
I've
slide
been
into
through it.
adulthood.
Yes.
I'm way
Yeah.
late for
My
that.
three
Way
are in
late for
their
that.
20s. So I 100%. Yeah. I promise you it does get
Yeah, it
better.
does get
My
better.
three are 22, 26, and 28. And you know what? We're best friends.
Yeah,
All
Almost.
right.
yeah.
Well,
They're best friends
I'm
with each other.
right in the middle with 16 and 17-year-olds.
No,
So,
Oh,
and
gosh. No,
mine's,
and
those are
one of
not
each.
fun. I was going to ask.
Yeah. So once I kind of think, okay, we have a hand on how one is thinking, then it's like, nope, scrap that. We're
Yep.
back to the drawing board and dealing with the other one.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
man.
you'll
Dealing with
get through it.
teenagers is not like dealing with baking.
Nope. If
It's
only it
like
was that
chocolate.
easy.
It's your chocolate time right now.
Yeah.
Tempering chocolate.
Oh, triggering, very triggering.
Oh man. All
Well,
right.
I'm glad I'm on the other side of it. So I get it.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. So, well, we're just going to change gears just a little bit.
Sure.
It's Pride Month, and
Mhm.
you are such a beautiful ambassador for the 2S LGBTQ plus community. On your Instagram platform, all your TV appearances. I saw this heart wrenching post you did on your Instagram page just recently, and it said, "Pride is important because someone tonight still believes they're better off dead than
Mm.
being gay." And that literally brought me to tears just reading that.
Mm.
And it's so heartbroken that there are so many people who still feel that way. And I'd love to hear more about how you're lending your voice to support this community and the importance of it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, it's a bit of a weird situation for me because in these current times, I'm very much aware of my privilege as a white cisgender gay man, um, and how I guess, and I'm trying to choose my words in the correct way. Not that I have to be careful in speaking for other people, but how to actually use my platform that I have to draw attention to spotlight, to make room at the table for those other individuals. I know there has been an awful lot of advances made. The fact that I can be on TV and compete on shows and have articles covering where I can talk freely about my husband and my marriage and how adopting kids. Um, I'm aware that there are other individuals out there that don't have that privilege, but also that I have that privilege and I have that platform because of the work that other people have done before. And it's often other people who haven't been white, cisgendered male. Like Stonewall, you have Sylvia Rivera and Martha B. Johnson, who were key figures in that. Um, and for me, it's almost like the least I could do is actually to, as I said, make space at the table for those people, or at least give somebody a reference point. I remember growing up, I was never a bit, although I loved food and baking, I was never a big fan of the professional chefs. It was always people like Delia Smith or Julia Child. um, who spoke about food and the love of food and how that can actually, embrace people and draw people in. And that for me was actually very of a similar vein in my head of how trying to be inclusive in a community and, having people welcome, but also making them think, you know what, here's somebody like me who is in a space that I thought there wouldn't be somebody like me in. And I can kind of, I can do my thing. And if I could, as I kind of started out saying, if I could use my platform to be that reference for somebody, or at least that, like, you know what, I know of this person and I know that they're gay. I know they have a family. I know they're married and it's stuff that I want and they're getting on and doing it. So maybe I can. I think actually for me, one of the things I remember when I first started doing TV shows, and it was during the pandemic where I did some virtual segments. And I did a segment on one of the morning shows, and it may actually have been a pride segment or not, but I spoke about my husband, and it was just in a kind of an offhand way of mentioning, oh, my husband, blah, 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 etc. And then about a week later or so, my husband and kids, we were walking through the village, and somebody came up and stopped me and said, look, I saw you and I thought you were great. I said, the fact that I heard you mention your husband, and I just thought, yeah, that's great. You're really cool. And he was a complete stranger.
Mhm.
But just the fact that I think I can, yeah, that I can be a reference, or I don't know. It's weird because Christina, I was even conveying this to you. There's a lot of kind of feedback of, oh, we recognize you're from TV and you've done so much and you're a celebrity baker. And it's like, I'm not really. I'm just a completely self-taught person who likes baking, and I want that to come across, not just in the straight community, but also in the gay community.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I think also, and I'm aware I'm rambling a bit here. I think also Pride Month is really important because in a sea of what can be rainbow washing, authenticity can kind of get lost in there.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always try and do in my baking and how I present myself, whether it's on TV or in a competition show, is to be authentic to myself. I
Hmm.
will not and haven't ever shied away from mentioning the fact that I'm a part of the 2S LGBTQ plus community, or that I have a husband, or that I have kids. They are key factors in making, Gavan Knox who I am as a baker, and how I
Hmm.
embrace, preparing food for people, giving it to people, and my philosophy on experimenting and beating and, marching to the sound of my own drum, really.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you for sharing.
mhm. And thank you so much for being authentically you and being who you are. And I don't think it would be the same if you weren't. So really appreciate what you bring
Mhm.
and love that part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's not often actually that nowadays, I guess, having that element of being part of the community can sometimes be brushed over in the fact of, oh, you made this awesome cake or you've done this. And, but whereas for me, it's a very valid facet and key component of who I am as a baker.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. You need to celebrate yourself and who you are.
Mm,
And that is only inspiring to people who maybe feel like they are not able to do that in whatever
Mhm.
mm,
way that they may want to, whether it is talking about their sexuality, their beliefs, their ingredients, any of
mm,
those things.
Mhm.
They can look at you and they can say, you know what, this guy knows who he is and is not afraid to show it. And I need to be
mm,
able to do that myself.
mm.
And
Yeah.
it's
Even,
wonderful.
it
Thank
doesn't
you
have
for
to be
sharing.
anything major, even just a
Yeah.
slight way, then, then I'm thinking, yeah, my job is done.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
Wonderful.
well, now that we're all a little bit choked up, let's lighten things up a bit. We are going to have a lightning round version of this or that. The
Oh,
crumbs
okay.
in my beard, YYZ edition. So this is a little game we play, this or that. We
Okay.
will throw a couple of options at you, sometimes three options, and we want your immediate reaction answer.
Okay.
So you ready? Okay, here we
Mm-hmm.
go. Christina,
Go.
why don't you start us off?
All right.
Go.
Guinness beer or Irish whiskey?
Irish whiskey.
That was fast. Okay,
Yes, that
excellent.
was
Can you
fast.
recommend a brand? I'm supposed to make an Irish
yes.
car bomb wedding cake, and I need to know which one to use.
I think Jameson is probably a good fail safe.
Okay.
There are various other
Noted.
ones, but they tend to be more, if you want to actually sip and savor. If you're cooking with it, and of course sip and savor it whilst you're cooking, then Jameson I think is a pretty good bet.
Sounds
Sounds
like a
great.
plan.
Awesome. Okay. T Swift or Celine Dion?
Oh my God, no! That's like Sophie's choice. I gotta have to go with Celine. She was there before T Swizz, but it's close. It's close. And also the
Okay.
other reason is I have managed to get tickets to Celine numerous times before. I cannot get tickets to T Swizz.
Not
So
even you,
I
Gavin?
know.
You
nope,
can't even
not
get.
even
Okay,
me.
so if anybody is out there that has a couple extra tickets for Gavin for T Swift, doesn't matter which
No,
show.
I need some, please.
Maybe
I need
6
some.
tickets. We can all go together.
Yeah, there we go. Job
Then
done.
call us. Call us. So here's a question for you on that then. So if you had the opportunity to bake for them, what would you make for
Oh.
Celine?
I
Not
think
such a
for
late turnaround
Celine,
after all.
I'd I'd go to the roots, I guess, and do something like a pudding shumao for her, which could be quite daunting because she would actually know, what's good and what's not. But for me, I'd like to go and face the beast head on and go, I have done this. What is it like? Does it meet your approval?
That would be nerve-wracking, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be a good
I mean,
episode.
if it got Celine's
anything.
approval, then it'd be like, I'm done. Just,
Right?
I'm out of here.
Life is good. Don't need to do
Yes,
anything
exactly.
else.
Yeah.
Melting chocolate, microwave or bain marie when you do chocolate?
Bain marie. Microwave, I think it's too finicky, and also, yeah, it can go wrong very quick all of a sudden. So bain marie, I find all the way.
Okay. Chocolate, white milk, dark, flavored.
Chocolate dark, I would say.
Okay.
Purely because I find
eating
it
or
better
for
to cook
working
with, for working with. For eating, I'm torn between milk or gold chocolate, actually, with it. But yeah, dark I find
Gold
works
I've
better
never
with
tried.
flavors. It's actually really interesting. It's basically like a caramel flavor to
Okay.
it. But even what I wasn't aware of before I started going into the world of chocolate, is that you can actually make it again. You can make it yourself at home if you caramelize down white chocolate in the oven, or again in the microwave. You can end up with gold chocolate.
Oh, that's
But
gold
again,
chocolate.
it's just one of those things that's
Okay.
a little bit laborious because you have to take it out like every couple of minutes, stir it around, put it back in, take it out again a few minutes later. Because if you leave it cook too long in a segment, it will actually catch and start to burn. And the important thing about it is to keep the milk particle, the milk proteins going around in it so they caramelize rather than actually burning. I'm aware. I'm sure there's perfectly good chocolate aficionados out there who can spot 100 things wrong with what I've said, but that's the general idea.
Sounds good. Thanks for that.
Makes sense. Okay.
Spice level, mild, medium, hot, extra hot, or inferno?
I would go hot as my kind of starting ground. If I'm really feeling like I want to center myself almost, I would probably go inferno. There's just something about doing that. But I'm fussy when it comes to it because for me, hot needs to complement the flavor of it. So I don't see a point of having something that's
It needs
hot
to
and
have flavor,
spicy
not just
for
burn.
the sake of it being hot,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah, that's
So
totally
this
fair.
whole thing of, is it Hot Ones? Whatever the program
Yeah.
is where they eat chicken wings. I love watching it, but, it kind of gets to a point where, especially with the chili sauces, can you actually taste anything, or does it taste of anything, or are you just basically killing off your taste buds? That's the thing I don't really understand.
Yeah, for sure.
And the thing that I found is sometimes that actually helps counter the sensation of, because my mind focuses on or starts picking apart what the flavors are, as opposed to just a sensation of my mouth is like, seventh circle of Dante's hell right now.
Exactly.
That cannot be enjoyable.
No.
Okay. On that note, on the note of flavors, best food city in the world, New York or Toronto?
Toronto. You've already seen me talk about this.
We already know that.
And again, I
I
think
know,
I
but we
don't
had
think I got to this level of it in that one of the reasons why I fell in love with Toronto and the food scene, and for me it is a
Mhm.
fantastic food scene, is not just the variety that's here, but also the accessibility of it. So
Mhm.
London and New York have great food scenes, but they're often higher price.
Mhm.
They're often, it can be very
True.
cliquey when you go into exploring the restaurants and what's good with food and what's not good. Whereas I find with Toronto, there is a genuine appreciation of good food that you don't have to pay through the nose for.
Mhm.
It's accessible and
Mhm.
somebody can get
That's
to
true.
it quite easily. And for me, that is fantastic because it feeds into my whole philosophy of food is there to be appreciated by people. It's not just something that, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or you have to eat it this certain way, or you have to appreciate
Mhm.
this. It's like, no, I just like what I
Mhm.
like. And sometimes I love it. And if that can be made available to all and sundry, great. That's all part
Mhm.
of, I come back to this whole saying of having a seat at the table.
Mhm.
And that's why I love people like Julia
Mhm.
Charles and Delia Smith and Darina Allen, because it was all about that philosophy of sharing food, sharing the enjoyment of it, and getting that back. It
Mhm.
wasn't about actually having to earn it.
I saw
Yeah.
something recently, I can't remember which publication it was, that basically stated that Canada has amazing food for that price value proposition
Mm,
is
yeah.
so much higher here in Canada. The
Mm,
quality of our food versus the price that we pay here versus what, like you said,
yeah.
in other places
Completely.
in the world. So we're
Hmm.
really, really lucky.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of our restaurants are suffering right now.
Hmm.
Please go out there and support
Oh,
as well,
absolutely. Yeah.
and enjoy the great stuff that we do have available here in Canada.
Mm,
And know if you've traveled anywhere internationally, especially since COVID, we have exceptionally great valued product out here.
yeah.
Starbucks, Tim Hortons, or local coffee shop?
I would go local coffee shop if there's one available. Unfortunately, it's not always the way these days. And I mean, after that, it's kind of like I'll go with whatever is convenient in there. I don't have a loyalty to any of the mass chains of going, oh, I have to go to
Mm-hmm.
this or have to go to this. I did
Mm-hmm.
go through a period of where it would be Starbucks because I liked what they did with, the new flavors.
Mm-hmm.
But after a while, I just got to think, well, this just tastes the same as the other one that was out 2 months ago. They've called it something else and put, I don't know, oat milk in it or something. But in
Yeah.
essence, it just tastes the same. But I usually would try and do the smaller independents. When we lived midtown, near where my kids used to go to school, there used to be this great Turkish coffee shop there. I don't think it's there anymore, but they were fantastic in that it was Turkish coffee, and then they had lots of like
Mm,
Turkish sweets and desserts. So it was a
great.
whole package, and yeah, that was great. And totally beat Tim's or Starbucks any day
Yeah.
with it.
Reality shows, yes or no?
Yeah, for a whole series, maybe not. It depends
Okay.
on what it's about. I like some of the ones, again, like we were saying earlier, there are so many these days that the
Hmm.
template for difference between them is actually pretty much non-existent. And I know this rules out
Sadly.
any chances of me getting hired to compete in a reality TV show from now, but I'm going to say it. Really. Yeah, it's very much kind of like baking by numbers.
Mm.
And we'll have
Mm.
Halloween or Easter or Christmas or whatever, but I think it's become almost boiling the bag. As
Mm.
regards to concepts, where I think the last good reality TV show that I watched, cooking wise, am I allowed to mention names of programs? I guess
Sure.
I've already done it. It was
I
on
believe
Netflix,
so.
and I'm trying to remember. I
We're
think it
doing
was
it.
something like Boiling Point or something. It was basically almost like
Oh.
Big Brother, but with chefs in the house, and
Oh.
they had to compete against each other or compete in teams, and there was various tasks, and that was actually done really well, I thought, because it was,
I would enjoy that.
like we were
Mhm.
saying, it was that whole concept of watching a cooking show because you get to see them prepare the dishes or what their menu was, but then you also got to see, the fallout if somebody in the team didn't, portion up the desserts quick enough, or whatever part of the menu they were supposed to do, if that fell flat, it was like you could see the behind the scenes or
Mhm.
what happened in the living room afterwards. And of course, there was the voting, which was the other aspect.
And I can imagine, I mean, you've
Right.
got all the chefs in the kitchen and the
Yeah.
drama that would ensue with
Hmm.
having everybody who obviously thinks that they're maybe
They're
potentially
better.
better.
Yeah.
Their
Yeah.
egos come out probably a little bit. And
Yeah, there was a bit of that in there as well. And
yeah.
again, like any reality TV, it was great to see the, I guess, the way the personalities clashed or didn't clash. How you had somebody whose ego was so big they almost needed another studio for it, and then you had the other people who were a bit more humble and would just actually no, this is what I do. I know I'm good at it, so just leave me get on with it.
Yeah.
So it was good to watch how they played that way. But yeah, I think pressure cooker maybe was the name of it.
Oh,
It was
pressure
quite good. It's
cooker.
on
That
Netflix.
that
Yeah.
makes sense. One or the other. It's kind of
Mhm.
interesting when you get to see
Yeah.
it's not just seeing, the different dishes that they're making, although I always find that very fascinating. But
Mm.
when you get to see the personality and you get to know the
Yeah.
people behind the cooks or the bakes a little bit
Mhm.
more, that would makes it more interesting.
Yeah, I think that puts an interesting spin because you're almost getting the full story of the dish. So it's for me a lot
Mm-hmm.
about what I bake and what I cook is not just what I put in front of people. It's that talking point of how I arrived at doing it. And then what happens after the person has eaten it? What do they think about it? Or do they like it? Or are they
They
going to
do the
prepare it or
dishes.
try it or something? Yeah,
Yeah.
just put them in the dishwasher. So yeah, it's that whole journey I think that I find really interesting, and that program was really good at that as well because you got to hear them describe where they were taking from, the
Hmm.
conception in their head to putting it on the plates,
Yeah.
and then of
We'll
course the
have to look
result
into
of
that.
whether they got to stay.
Mhm. Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
fascinating, actually.
exactly.
I think that's
Yeah,
a
it does.
must-watch
Yeah.
TV, must-see TV. Cooking or baking? I know you do both very, very well. So, what's your preference?
Baking. I started off, as I said, baking, experimenting, went into cooking, stopped for a while, and then really fell back in love with baking. And I know there's this whole fear of baking, I guess, because you have to be exacting about things. But for me, there are certain elements you don't fool around with, and that you have to
Mhm.
just kind of go. The recipe says
Mhm,
this. I'm going to stick to this. But then, there's almost like the add-ons and the mix-ins and the things that add your personality to it.
mhm,
That's where I think you can play with, and that's what I like doing. And
Yeah.
often I find when I talk to people that have a fear of baking, I think they get stuck on the fundamentals of it. And that's where they just kind of go, I can't do that right, so I'm
mhm,
hopeless at baking. And it's like, no, you're not.
mhm,
Try it out,
mhm.
fool
Yeah.
around with it. Stick to doing ABC, and then after that, the world is your
Mhm.
oyster.
Yeah, and that's I think
Yes.
what
Have
we're hoping.
parameters.
Mm,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do with what we're doing as part of Baking Scraps is really inspire people. I mean, we have a lot of people who will hopefully be watching this that are bakers, but then
mm,
we probably will have some other people
mm,
that are scared to pick up that apron and get in the kitchen and
mm,
start creating and doing some baking. So we're really hoping this will give them that confidence or
mm.
inspire them to actually start exploring
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
doing some
Find the
baking.
joy in it.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, I
Yes,
definitely
find the
hope so. I
joy.
mean, as I say, I'm completely self-taught. I've never done even like a day or an evening course of baking. It's just been like, oh, I like the sound of that. I'll Google it, give me a few recipes and kind of mix and match from there. So
Yeah.
I think once you get over the hurdle of, okay, things can go wrong. You may burn it.
Hmm.
It may not rise, but then, but did you die? As I always say.
I just had
Yeah.
a fridge magnet that I bought and it just unfortunately fell off the fridge and cracked, but I really liked it because it said, "Many have
Oh,
eaten here, few have died."
yep. So there you go. See, that's the
I love
fundamental
it.
philosophy.
It is. It's a fundamental philosophy. All right, last question, and it's a big one.
Okay.
Butter tarts,
Are you
raisins or
ready?
no raisins? And he's
I
like,
knew you were going to say that. Even but when you said butter tarts, I knew it was raisins or no raisins. And for me, it is no raisins all the way. Do not give me those little globules of Satan in my butter tarts. Not happening.
Oh, I am.
I have been forced to being polite when somebody, has made butter tarts with raisins because that's how it's done. And I'm not going to yuck somebody's yum to the extent of saying that's the wrong way of
Mhm.
doing it.
Right.
That's
Yes.
not what I'm about. But for me personally, if I bake, it's without raisins. And as a personal preference, it's without raisins.
Gotcha.
Anything else is welcome. Pecans, bacon, chocolate chips, but no raisins. Leave those at the door.
There you go. I am team no raisin as well, Gavin,
Yeah.
and I was actually shocked, a few weeks
Don't
back
say it.
when I posed the question to Lisa, who I actually thought I knew, and it
Hey,
turns out she changed her mind. So she went from
stop.
a no raisin butter tart gal, no raisin
I had an
butter tart gal,
epiphany.
to all of a sudden, I know. I had the same look on
I
my
was
face. Yes.
Gavin,
Traitor.
Right? Right?
I was so upset
I'm
at myself.
stunned. Stunned.
You have gone to the dark
It was
side.
actually we did it. It was during
but
an
in
episode,
fairness,
so we will have video of my moment of stop.
Mhm.
Wait a second. My moment of realization when I was like, wait a second. I just realized I think I like raisins and butter. We were both so mad at me.
not mad. I think I was more stunned, and it just took me a little
Shocked.
while to process that new information that I was blindsided by.
You think you know somebody.
Right? Right? She didn't
Well,
care to
I
share
mean,
this
to be
before we
fair, I
started this
didn't know.
podcast thing.
I
That
didn't
might have been a deal
know.
breaker.
Okay, we have to go back in time then. Pretend I never said anything.
delete.
Right. Lots of editing that's going to end up on that on the editing floor there.
That was
Studio
a
floor.
weird moment. It was a very strange feeling to realize that I actually, when I think about biting into a butter tart, I picture raisin. I was very upset at myself.
But you were justified. I think you were justified, and I think the way you explained it was that you actually did have a butter tart that had raisins in it that blew your mind, and I think
it
that's
was the
why.
first good butter tart that I had ever had, because the only time I ever had butter tarts were at Grandma's house from Safeway growing up. That's all I ever had.
Right.
And so when I was in Toronto and we did our little baker tour, somebody was like, you have got to try a proper butter tart. And the one that they gave me to try had raisins in it. Did have butter in it too. And I really liked it. So,
Was it more a case of you actually liked the butter tart, or you liked the raisins in it? Happened to have raisins in it.
Yeah, I don't think I was like, this raisin is the best part of this butter tart, but I also wasn't like, I'm going to spit out
nobody's story ever starts that way.
At least not our friends, right?
Oh man, it just makes sense though, because now half of the baking scraps can represent the community that doesn't like raisins, and the other half of the baking scraps can say, well, I guess I have to admit that I do like raisins in my butter tarts.
You know what? Love you, Lisa.
It's a minor flaw that can be overlooked.
And again, this is a judgment-free zone on the baking scraps, and
safe space.
And it is very, very safe
Keep
space.
saying that.
And yes, no, it totally is. It totally is. You know what? That is why there are so many different things that we can bake, so many different ways we can bake them in, so many different ways we can experiment with our bakes. And for some people, it's going to resonate really well with, and for other people, it might not be their cup of tea. Mm-hmm. And that's okay too, because it will be somebody's cup of tea. And that is the magic and the joy of baking and sharing what we do.
Exactly. All the way.
So true. Thank you guys. I appreciate the forgiveness.
You're welcome.
No worries.
Well, Gavin, thank you so much for being here with us. I so appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and chat with us. I hope you had some fun. And we have one more thing.
And I learned about you and your love of raisins and butter tarts.
Oh.
I'm not going to let that go.
You know, at least she was a mint chocolate chip ice cream lover. Though.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
So we all agree on that one. And I'm sure we're going to get some hate mail on that one.
Probably. Well,
Yeah, yeah.
hey, you
Oh,
can be the
Okay.
sweetest apple in the orchard, and somebody's always going to like peaches.
Exactly.
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 Mhm.
But thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure for having you with us today. And yeah, thank you. And
One
thank you
more
for
thing.
being you. Oh,
Oh, one more.
I forgot. Yes,
Almost forgot.
I
Okay, go
almost
ahead,
forgot.
Christina.
Okay, so we end every episode with a baking scrap pro tip
Ah,
that you, if you would love to share one with us, and it could be something that you do in your while you're baking, a tool that you use, a specific technique, some special ingredients. What is your baking scrap for our listeners today?
okay, so my one that comes to mind, you'll remember I mentioned making scones earlier.
Mhm.
One of the things that I do is I freeze my butter before I put it in.
Mhm.
So rather than actually cube up cold butter and rub it in with my hands, I actually put the butter in the freezer and then grate it in. Then that way
Brilliant.
you already have the small little pieces of butter in there. They're going to stay in that size because they're frozen, and you're not actually having to put your hands in, and the heat of your hands won't melt them. So freeze your butter. If they're in sticks, all the much better. And just be careful of your knuckles and your fingertips when you're grating it in. And yeah, grate in your frozen butter into scones. It also works with pastries, anything where you
Mhm.
need those little globules of butter.
Yeah,
For
Freeze
like
the
a
butter.
rough puff.
that
Yeah.
mhm.
Perfect. That's an
Wonderful
awesome
tip.
tip.
Thank you. That is
You're welcome.
absolutely fabulous. And I think life changing, game changing for a lot of people moving forward. Because it is. I mean, I think that's the trick with making good flaky pastry
Mm,
as well is not overworking your dough
yeah,
and not overheating it. So love that. Thank
that's
you,
it.
Gavin.
And
You're
not having
welcome.
to
And
walk to the
thank
sink with
you.
guff all over your hands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
Thank you
exactly.
so much, Gavin.
Exactly.
Well, have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Not much
You
left of
too.
it, but we will talk with you again and we'll come to Toronto and taste your
Yes,
black
please
garlic
do. Let
ice
me
cream. We're
know.
very much looking forward to
Yep.
it.
Okay. Have a good.
We
Sounds good.
will.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
You
you.
too. Bye bye.